The grim future of Kenyans up north, biting drought. Death toll rises as Cyclone Idai hits Zimbabwe. Our guns laws will change, says New Zealand Prime Minister. Hello, good morning, I'm Dibalana. Now, death unforgivingly stalks the people of Turkana County. 2 people have so far died of starvation, but thousands more are living precariously without any food, water or pasture for their livestock. NTV's Lois Wangoi visited some villages in Turkana County where its people are barely clinging to their lives and reports on the grim situation unfolding in the country's north.
It is a torrid and cruel landscape clinging to the desert plains of Turkana. Its people are equally clinging to the thinning line between life and death. There's hardly any vegetation. The searing temperatures have also dried up the rivers and the water ponds. Now they have nothing to eat or drink.
Mifugo nayo imekosa kitu ya kunini. Kila siku inakufa tu kwa mtoni, hata ikikufa hakuna kitu tena hivyo tu.
In the drab Nyong'o village, the old women and children are surviving in solitude after the young men traveled with their herds in search of water and pasture. Akai Lompo is now wasting away. Her caregiver, her daughter-in-law, tells us that her situation has deteriorated in the last 1 month. Now they have nothing to feed on or drink.
Amuki asubuhi alale hivyo faka inafika mahali hata ugonjwa ikimshika kidogo na anaenda.
Makamo Tipen should be nursing herself and her 2-month-old baby, but this 15-year-old mother now begs for food and water along the roads.
Huyu mtoto anataka maziwa, anataka maji. Ni mwezi 2, lakini mama yake hakuna kitu kenye anampatia.
Before leaving Nyong'o village, we share with the hungry here some bitings, but the rations are hardly enough to sustain them. At Kanweke village, most houses are deserted as residents have moved out in search of food and water. It is a brutal battle for survival. Here we found Wosheli Lemues, a widow slowly wasting away. Her thinning, frail frame stands symbolic of this community's thinning hope of existence. I am very, very hungry. I feel so thirsty too. My body is very weak. I cannot move at all. She is a mother of 5 and a grandmother. Her family left her behind in search of food and water. She was too frail to accompany them. Kamiki village is also striving to survive the drought in Turkana. Asokon Lomuin, we are told, passed out just an hour before our arrival. Her family members are still in shock, and an interview with us is the list of their concerns. As she fights to regain her strength from the little nourishment we offer, the rest of her family gathers outside her house with relief. But it is only temporary, as the future holds even darker prospects. The Turkana County administration has come under huge criticism for responding too late to this disaster, yet the county receives the 2nd largest allocation of funds. It has been 10 months since the county started battling the big dry. 2 people have since been confirmed dead in this county. Now, the situation we were able to observe on this day is of those residents that dwell close to the urban areas or close to the highways, if you may. Now, those residents tell us the situation is even more critical and dire and wanting for a majority of Turkana residents who dwell in the very rural parts of Turkana County. Lois Wangoi, NTV.
Now here is some irony. While 1 million people are at risk of dying of starvation, maize, forming part of a nation's reserves, has been going bad in the silos. Billions in dubious payments have been made for the crop to a handful of suppliers who colluded with the National Cereals and Produce Board officials at the expense of a genuine farmer or genuine farmers. And to add insult to injury, tens of thousands are going hungry in Tana River and Kilifi counties as the Galana Kulalu Food Security Project, touted as a gateway to a food-secure future, lies fallow. NTV's Olive Barrows exposes the shameful underbelly of a nation whose larger populace can only hope to scrape by, as its leaders seemingly focus on sharing out the spoils of power.
Perennially, we are inundated with images of whole communities subsisting on wild fruit in the face of starvation. Malnourished children, their stomachs protruding as their parents trek for kilometers in the unforgiving sun for rations of cooking oil and tinfuls of cereal. Their elderly down to skin and bone, knocking on death's door as they lie prostrate. Before long, those with a good heart are called upon to step in by way of donations as the government scrambles to marshal emergency funds. This story retraces a familiar line. But when the Jubilee administration sought power in 2012, they promised to rewrite it, being so brazen as to make this declaration. The Jubilee Alliance will ensure that no Kenyan will die of hunger. 1 term down and 2 years into their second, and death still shadows many communities. 11 people had died of starvation as late as Saturday in Baringo and Turkana counties as a result of the failed short rains. But promises had been made. The Galana Kulalu Food Project, we were told, would herald an end to Kenya's food security problems. But 2 years past its completion date, and works have stalled as a result of a payment dispute between the National Irrigation Board and the Israeli farm contracted to get the 10,000-acre model farm up and running. Green Arava blaming ruthless cartels for the headwinds they rein into, stating, "We have borne the brunt of ruthless cartels, keen on sustaining their businesses in maize milling and maize importation at whatever cost. The uninhibited infiltration of cartels into seemingly professional government agencies for political and financial considerations makes it practically impossible for even the most well-intended projects to flourish. May God bless Kenya and save it from the enemy within." In the case of the National Cereals and Produce Board, the enemy within was its officials, who colluded with unscrupulous traders to defraud the Kenyan taxpayer of approximately 2 billion shillings. The genuine farmer left out in the cold. And in what is akin to a spit in the face, this maize that came at such a high cost is not only tainted in the figurative sense, but in the literal too. The maize is going bad in storage, as 1 million+ Kenyans risk death by starvation. All the while, the political class is absorbed more by who will have the last word in the political diatribe than the real life and death consequences of corruption eating the country alive. Olive Barrows, NTV.
That very telling story by Olive Barrows, and Lois Ongui also will act as a segue to a discussion this morning, because we need to discuss this, and this also has been aptly captured by our cartoonist. This is Victor in the Star. I will throw it over to a panelist this morning to just talk to us and tell us what they think so far. Are we joking as a country? Truly, do we have to wait for every year so that we can talk about the same stuff, the same tragedy of people dying of hunger, and we have, knee-jerk reactions from the government? This is a picture that has been drawn by Victor in the Star today, and I will throw it over to Dr. Shemo Chodho, the global leader of Kenya Diaspora Alliance. Also, we do have with us this morning, this is the Member of Parliament from Daragwa, Jeremiah Kioni, who is also chair of CAOC, that is a Commission Implementation Oversight Committee in Parliament, and also we do have with us as well Samuel Pogusio, who is a senator from West Pokot, also the chair. I tend to forget this particular committee.
It's called the delegated legislation. The
delegated legislation in the Senate. Thank you very much for reminding me. But let's just begin with you, Dr. Shemo Chodho. Looking at this picture, if we just have it back on the screen so that you may comment on it.
Morning, Debal.
Morning to you.
It's very unfortunate that in the 21st century we're seeing the graphic photos of Kenyans starving. It's very unfortunate. I should add that it's like every time we meet here, there are many deaths. If it's not caused by famine, it's extrajudicial killings. It's really, really unfortunate. We don't seem to value human life. But having said that, most of this happening at a time when we pumped in already so much money in Galana Kulalu. I was watching a devolution minister last night on one of the media channels trying to defend that project. And I was wondering, really, somebody's missing something. Is it me who is not getting something right? I really think that that project needs to be audited because somebody needs to bring out the facts. If money went in, was a feasibility of that cost, that money that we spent? If some infrastructure was put in, wasn't there a prior study to establish that this was a business case, that as soon as you put in the infrastructure, we'll be getting foods out of Kulalu, of Galana Kulalu. I think it's unfortunate, Debal. I must nonetheless compliment the National Drought Management Authority and Red Cross. They seem always to be coming to our help. But this should not be something that we just react to. There should be better planning. And I'm hoping that this year the effects will be very minimal. The very sad thing is that you find while people are starving in Turkana, and the devolution minister confirmed, next door in Transnzoia, there is oversupply of maize. So what really is not right? Is it the supply chain that's not efficient or what? Really, it's government's incumbent upon government to give Kenyans answers.
All right, but you're talking about poor planning or planning from the government. We've had initiatives. And I remember Kenyans also came together collectively and do the Kenya for Kenyans initiative. And we vowed and we said, never again will this happen. And we've always been seeing the Ministry of Devolution with the Cabinet Secretary, then it was Ann Waiguru, now we have also Eugene Wamalwa as well, flagging off these trucks from, from Nairobi to go to Turkana. And I tend to wonder, do we take any, sort of expediency in this as the CSS, that it should be shameful when actually we're flagging off trucks to go and feed, hungry Kenyans in the Northern Rift. So are we remaining none the wiser as far as this is concerned? Because every year, I tell you every year, from January, February, March, April, we'll have the same stories. And we'll see the same CSS at different stations talking about how, the government has enough food. And we tend to wonder, they say that we have enough food. I listened to the CS yesterday. And what I also failed to understand is the fact that, yes, they're looking for private, investors. Private investors on this. And it says the last time we had put an expression of interest, many of them also had shown interest. And I'll check to see if any actually has actually sold through. Check to see as if this is an afterthought. I don't know. Jeremiah Kioni, what do you think?
Deval, this is without doubt another moment of embarrassment to us as a country, as leaders. And I don't think we can be able to master the words that can condemn this. But when we are talking about corruption, to me, this is also corruption. If there's somebody who was charged, and certainly there are people who are in office who have been charged with this responsibility, and they have failed to discharge it. I don't know what they think. I think perhaps their thinking is that when it has been highlighted by the media, it is the time they should run around and try to be seen to be doing something. And in our constitution, in our statute books, there is an offense referred to as abuse of office, among many other offenses that one can cite. But I believe if there are people who, and not if there are those individuals who are in offices, they are supposed to have ensured that areas that are prone to this kind of happening every year, we act before it has happened. If it's, one has to wait to look popular by doing some flagging, being seen to be answering the questions with all the mastery of English language that can be seen. I think these are crimes against humanity. These are crimes that really would fall within the docket of corruption, and they should be charged in court. It will not be two.
Right,
it will not be two ways. But having said that also, I think it's also important to say that these areas have also received the largest amount of money in terms of devolved funds, money from non-government organizations, aid from all sorts of this country that also needs to be accounted for. Are there leaders in these regions who are making the best in terms of this, who are looking forward to every other time starvation so that they can make some few coins from it? I believe so. And some of them, and not some of them, and it includes even directed readers who come from these areas. We have CDF going to those areas. I mean, why wouldn't you? I know the CDF board has also its own difficulties. But if you are to use money to ensure that people do not die, you are better off in court saying that you use money to save people's lives and not being contained to things they are calling codrists and the rest. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right, but I wanted you also to comment on this editorial cartoon of which Dr. Shema Chodha has not actually commented on it. I want you to comment on it.
On the issue of being seen to be with the choppers when all this is happening, certainly is ironical. There's something that we need to address. But isn't it the reality? Instead of actually focusing on development, we are navel-gazing now on 2022 politics. This is all about, it's me, myself, and I. We're not thinking about Kenyans, and this is a crop of leaders that we have in this country. Without doubt, it is an embarrassment to be seen to be flying in a chopper over this kind of scenario. But also, if then these guys are also to wait for food to be delivered, for example, if the food was to be driven to that, it will take all the time. But I think it's the way we balance things. What annoys me as a leader is that next year this time, that part of the country will still be dry. There will be excess food in Trans Nzoia.
Yeah, fantastic.
We have excess potatoes in Daragwa. We have milk being bought at 25 shillings because there is excess milk. And this is a system, and I mean, the government exists to ensure that people don't suffer.
Thank you.
And there are persons, there are individuals who are paid on a monthly basis to ensure that we don't see this. It is annoying. You don't even know what to say.
What I fail to understand is, of course, the cabinet secretary will come and say, now we've not actually crossed the emergency zone as it is right now. But people so far have died. I don't know what emergency are we talking about, if emergency is, yeah? And then he says we have enough food in the country.
Why wait for people to die?
Then this is poor leadership that is coming from that particular devolution ministry. Why would we be having enough food in the country and yet other parts of this country people are dying? So what is happening to the distribution? And this is the same stuff we talked about. Yeah. I mean, this is not news. This is just something which has been there. I'm saying every year.
Yes, as the senator comments on it, malnutrition is bad enough. To see people hungry, don't wait to see them dying. To see people hungry in this country this way, it's
shameful.
It's really an embarrassment.
Samuel Pugisho, emergency, what really accounts for it? Is it the sheer number of people who've died so that we've crossed that red zone and we have enough food in the country and people are dying?
Well, first of all, we are showing opulence at the time when we need to be really identifying with the people who are dying. If you look at the star, for example, on page 30.
On page 30?
Page 30. It is actually claimed about that hunger kills 20. I don't know whether you see that. Hunger kills 20.
Yes, in Baringo.
In Baringo, and Turkana, and I want to associate with this story because as I was growing up, I have faced starvation like this. I've looked it in the eye, and if you look at the fruit they're showing there, once you start seeing the people eating that fruit, this is a poisonous fruit. This is a poisonous food that is cooked for about 12 hours before it's become good for eating. It's called loma in the Pokot language. Once you see people eating that, it means that's the end. They're just waiting to die. And so it's unfortunate. I think if we were to look at the human rights that we have in this country, and of course, Article 28 of our Constitution says you have a right to dignity. And these people's dignity has been completely thrown out of the window. Article 43, I think, C, that says everybody has a right to be free from hunger and to have adequate food. Those rights should not just be played with. I think because Kenyans, 20 people dying or more at this point in time, Even the minister who is talking, he should be either retiring, resigning, or actually owning up, because I think we have these issues that are dogging. Now, explain to me how, since independence, we truck food to Turkana and to Baringo since independence. Now, how do you feed your population with trucks just trucking from Nairobi? When we've got cereal boards everywhere, stores everywhere, we have food in cereal boards, which is going bad right now. We have something called National Food Grain Reserve. Grain reserve.
Yes.
And there's somebody in
strategic
charge.
Grain reserve.
Strategic grain
yes.
reserve. And there is somebody employed fully to be in charge of that strategic grain reserve. And there are many what you call C1 centers or early warning centers that tell the government actually about the way things are. So for Turkana every year to be in the media, for West Pokot to be in the media every year, for Baringo to be in the media every year, for Tana River to be in the media every year. And when we have a planning ministry, and we have agriculture ministry, and then we have all devolution. So these people should be talking of an emergency right now. And these families don't pretend that they're hungry. It's very clear that they're very hungry. If you look at that picture that you're showing there, that woman doesn't have to prove to you that they're hungry. That lady, she's just hungry. She has not eaten.
This is undignified.
And that's
this
not...
Is, yes, this is not dignity at all. I think
so
no Kenyan should be subjected to such.
I come from the area, which is like Kachaliba is just like this. And very soon you'll start seeing people migrating into a neighboring country, hoping that maybe there's better food there. And that's not dignity. That's not dignity. And so I do not think we should be just discussing this matter. I think it should be a matter of national importance discussed in the parliaments. I think that the ministries in charge should show that they are concerned about these people and their rights.
Right, but what is the rhyme or reason actually for declaring, a drought or hunger or famine a national disaster? Is it just a pronouncement, or what really follows a pronouncement?
The BAL, it's extreme, as my colleagues say, it's extremely difficult to have the right words to capture this crisis. You know, by the time a lady gets to that stage, when I'm looking at the lady on the screen, that's not something that happens overnight. This is somebody who probably for the past 2-3 months hasn't been getting proper food. So for somebody to imagine that this is something that just happened overnight, really, really, that's not true. But it also is an indictment, in my view, on local leadership. They must have been experiencing or noticing the early warning systems that Senator Pogiso is talking about, that really a crisis is happening, is coming. Are the leaders, local leaders, not in touch with the citizens? Because to see somebody to go through that, the BAL, really, really, that's something that has been on for a while. I keep wondering, and again, as I'm watching the devolution minister yesterday say, oh, we have 4 billion or 5 billion shillings to cushion. You just keep wondering, why didn't we even use part of that?
Did we stash away the money, actually, knowing that there will be droughts and people, yes?
It defeats all logic. Or is it that an opportunity is just being created for another 4-5 billion to be squandered? So really, 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 I'm hoping that the legislatures, we have two on the table, that will take this matter seriously, that when Parliament reconvenes or convenes this week, that this, as a matter of national urgency, this matter is discussed, and more so at a time when the President has pronounced the Big Four agenda, and food security being number one. It would have been very nice if we're saying for once, because of declaring food security and agribusiness or agriculture as one of the Big Four, that at least this year we survived this kind of sin. It's immoral, it's unacceptable, and I'm hoping that we don't just wait to react and also make noise after it and intervene.
I still want to understand, when the President makes the pronouncement, what really follows from that? Is it just a political expediency, or maybe you've made the pronouncement? What remedial actions follows after we've declared a national disaster?
The BAL, maybe also you said, I didn't comment on that picture with the choppers.
No, answer my question first. I think that candle has been blown.
I think it's interesting. I don't know, again, whether it's a case of the left and the right hand not being in sync, because I'd expected the concerned ministers, particularly agriculture and devolution, and of course county government, to immediately move with speed to try and stem this condition, particularly once the President made the pronouncement. But allow me, the choppers I was seeing, I was thinking these are drones delivering food. I would have been so happy if that was happening, instead of people, of course, having fun with the choppers and all that. It's very difficult to reconcile that situation. While on the one hand, you are able to fly those many choppers, renting our airspace, but on the other, we are not able to feed the most basic. Look at that little child. Obviously, that's somebody who has been suffering for a long period of time in desperation. And well, maybe in this regard, it's rare that I have issue with the media. Perhaps we needed to have brought this up a little even earlier as this was happening. But nonetheless, I'm glad it's out now. It should have come a little earlier so that before somebody gets to that stage, you can imagine what suffering that young person has been through.
Let me just add to that by saying that when you say that it's become a national disaster, the president declares it, it's a window to allow international community to support, to donate food. It's also a window for what you call emergency organizations to start asking their supporters to bring in money to Kenya. It's also another time to do reallocations of budgets. And that's, of course, the tricky part, where you start now seeing monies drawn from other vote heads and changed and brought towards this particular arena. And also, it's about time, you know, you now start hearing about supplementary budgets even in counties, monies being withheld and things like that. That's the whole idea. It's just used as a term, so create an international what you call emergency period. But because you cannot now get money unless you declare that it's an emergency. Although if you planned properly, your friends and the international organizations who have actually this information could have supported you earlier. But when it becomes an emergency now, the World Food Program and all these organizations start coming in. All sorts of people start coming in, pouring in some food, which again now is left up to us to distribute.
Perhaps let me add, and this is just a thought. The international community forces you to embarrass yourself first for them to come in. Yeah. I have had even calling members of parliament saying this must be declared a national disaster. I don't think there's any joy in declaring anything a national disaster. A national disaster means that you are now calling in the international community to come and help you for the reason that you have been able to help yourself. And worse still, that you are unable to plan for that kind of a thing. And I don't think it is really embarrassing if you are dealing with things like tsunami. But when you know that this country sometimes next year, same period, we are likely to have, we'll have the dry spell, and food will be in shortage in some quarters of this country, while there will be plenty in other parts of the country. I've mentioned, like, when you see the kind of potatoes, the kind of, or the bags that we use for selling potatoes in Nyandarua, the milk prices now in Daragwa, when you are seeing people who can't feed, they can't get anything to eat. And now a kilo of milk is being bought at 20, 23 shillings because we have more than perhaps the market is asking for. There's something that is absolutely wrong. And I don't think a cabinet secretary should call a press conference to try and tell us what he is doing. They should be found doing it, but they should not be...
They're always planning.
They should not be telling us what they are doing.
This was actually the same narrative even last year.
I hope none of them holds a flag to try and show us they are flagging lollies towards Turkana.
That's a big shame.
These are very uncivilized things, very archaic way of managing ourselves 60 years after independence.
So, a question I would have normally asked is the strategic reserves. Yeah. Since we always know the parts of the country that suffer, you know, if it's not Baringo, it's Turkana, Tana River, and so on, why don't we have some of these warehouses for the strategic reserves in those places? So that instead of flagging those lorries coming out of Trans Nzoia, that you would already have strategic reserves where you anticipate there would be trouble. So really this is a question of planning, poor planning, and implementation. Poor planning and implementation. Right. So I think then we should actually throw in the hard question. If it's a question of poor planning and implementation, where is the sanctity of life that any Kenyan who loses life because of poor planning
from the leaders that we have actually given this responsibility of making sure that no one dies of hunger in this country, someone should step aside, right, in light of this. Because last year people died, the year before people died. Since Kenya for Kenya initiative, people have been dying and no one is stepping aside. So if we honor life and the sanctity thereof of life, then somebody actually should step aside, and that should be thrown right out to the Ministry of Devolution. Should we have the CS stepping aside?
It would be right. We've seen other countries where people step aside. In the UK, somebody stepped aside for just being 5 minutes late to answer questions in Parliament. Where is our conscience? And when you talk of sanctity of life, Debal, we left wondering. We lose so many young Kenyans, not just in famine, but you start wondering, do we really care for human life? The Bible says thou shalt not kill. And yet we kill. When you deny people food, you're really responsible for their death. So yes, I think we've lost, when it comes to sanctity of life, I really think there's an indictment on us as Kenyans, more so as government. And for me, I take it to the county governments, the devolved systems, because they're closer to these people, and they should have foreseen that there's trouble before it gets to the stage, unless they're also not in touch with the villages. Perhaps it's time we revisited the Nyumba Kumi thing or the village administrator proposals, so that we are sure that the county governments are in sync and have the pulse of the communities on the ground.
All right. General Kioni, you think the Cabinet Secretary Devolution should step aside?
Not step aside, he should
Resign.
be prosecuted.
He should be prosecuted.
Why did he take up the assignment? I mean, if you don't do enough, I listened to the interview that was being done to Professor Magoha. I have to be careful, it's not Magoha, it's Magoha.
Yes.
Right.
And he kept going over it again, that you need to go back into a dark room, understand why you are being appointed, what do you need to do, come up with a plan and do it. And if this is not the bottom line, I mean, you know, it's really, how can you be in an office today if people died yesterday because you never did what you are supposed to have done 2 days, three days ago?
Well, we remain
call a press
on
conference to tell us that you are doing something to people so that other people know. Why did you wait for even one person to die? I mean, it is, I am unable to discuss this issue. It's annoying. It's really, really annoying. And I want to tell you, Dibar, if you now walk over to the ministry's offices, you'll find people queuing there to make money out of deliveries to the poor. People who are looking for, is a business that cannot be dealt with early enough, because unless there is a crisis, you're not going to make a good profit out of delivering food out to those parts of this country. So
you say the Cabinet Secretary should actually resign?
And people should be charged with murder.
Right. And people should be prosecuted for murder. Yes. Right. Let's hear from Samuel Pogis as well. You think the CS should, in light of the sanctity of life, because he made the pronouncement last year, and people died last year, people now have died this year as well, you think he should actually step aside, or he should resign?
You know, when our ministers go to these international conferences and they show up like, you know, whatever it is, people look at them and say, what can you say, you? What can you say when your people are dying of hunger? What can you say here? So what I'm saying basically is that we should be conscious enough and say, this, I can't handle it.
Yes, continue.
Say, I cannot handle this, and it's too much for me, so just quit. And of course, if people die in your hands, and here is a tragedy that we have in our systems, political systems, is that we appoint our friends to positions. And so it's very difficult to prosecute your friends, and especially when you keep calling each other my friend, my friend. And because you know, you have a problem when they cannot, you cannot push them to the brink, you cannot push them to resign and things like that. I do believe that this is a matter that should be taken seriously, and any person who is responsible for people. One of the things that you will see very soon is a picture of the same cabinet secretary holding, dishing out from a sack or from a container maize and giving to people who are queuing in front of him. That would be the most ridiculous, indignified thing that you can do. Because they want to show now a picture opportunity that I'm helping my people. after many of them have died, and you're trying to show that you're doing something about it. And those pictures are going to be all over the media.
Yeah, so what is the difference with the West, who actually have these pictures, you know, seeking donation from the countries to help, you know, the poor, third world countries, right? There's no difference, truly,
but,
right?
And this is supposed to be the destination of that help. And now we're trying to show our people that we are actually magnanimous to you.
Right.
Diba, looking at this cartoon.
That in the Star?
The one in the Star.
Yeah.
I think there are many things, and I don't know whether you want me to take the opportunity to thank Prof.Anyan'g for being with us. It's a joy to have him.
It's been a while, Prof. Good to see you.
Yes, good to see you. One of the great Kenyans that we look forward to giving us leadership in the coming days. Look at that. We are in choppers going to funerals, and I don't think it's a crime using them to go to funerals.
Yes.
But the thing is that, and Harambee is for 2022.
2022.
The thing is, in this country, and I think we are now past the issues of Harambee, these fundraising activities are really also not quite useful. Because what we do is we create situations so that then we are seen to be humanitarian in our thinking, and we go with sacks of money to try and help these scenarios. Issues that, scenarios that, or cases that would have been done, would have been helped by just planning. But unless there are those kind of crises, you are not, people will not appreciate how generous you are, because an opportunity to give in these Harambees will have been a list. And I think we need to demonize some of these Harambees that we are doing. And not just because of hunger stricken, but the era, and I know Professor Nyong'o had a bill that we are trying to work on, to also look at are we through with these fundraising approaches? Do we need to just create crises, calamities in the country, then we rush there to fundraise, and then Kenyans will reward us with votes for having been too generous.
Right. But it showcases also what sort of leaders that we have in this country, right, across the board, who are never gazing on just their own interests. Yeah, if you go for this Harambees, it's just to have a political experiences instead of what is actually happening on the ground. This is what I'm trying to drive at this morning as well.
But instead of that blanket condemnation, because leaders are out there, and I think the best thing is to deal with the issue. When you condemn with a blanket, you lose it. I want us to focus on the CS devolution. Focus on the managers,
okay,
the individuals who've been given that responsibility. And really tailor your beam onto them.
Right.
When you now condemn all leaders, you are not that we here are not have no reasons to be condemned.
No, the leaders usually tell us.
No. So we again become defensive.
No, but looking at this interest, no, but you leaders also, you are to be faulted. We have this particular interesting also editorial cartoon inside the People Daily today. This is a disaster management team. There has been a bill lying with you in Parliament for almost 11 good years right now. The disaster management bill up to now has not been, taken from the shelves and dusted off. I wonder, you as leaders then, what do you think about the disaster? Or what is it disaster to us? Again, because if you have a bill in Parliament for 11 good years, then what is so good then to have legislators who are not effective, or it doesn't merit any premium for the leaders?
Dibal, again, to just help you focus on the light areas, is that in Parliament is also managed through a committee system. If you ask me about this bill, yes, I will not be able to tell you that it is pending somewhere, because it's not something that I'm engaged with on a daily basis. But there are departmental committees, and I wish the chairman of the relevant committee would then answer to this. If there is a bill that has been, that was supposed to have been dealt with from his committee, he should be able to tell us where is it and what are they doing.
You should tell us. We want to take a short break right now.
Before you leave that,
yes,
you know that that emergency, that ambulance, also supposedly ambulance, you can see it's actually not moving. It's grounded. So even though yes, we're saying we and somebody saying help has finally arrived, I think the point we're trying to make on the table is that we should not wait to the stage where it becomes an emergency. Why didn't we preempt and deal with the preventive actions that would have made sure that this doesn't happen? But in this regard, you can also see it's not sufficiently resourced. And in this regard, earlier on, we were talking about NDMA and Red Cross. I think they tried. And we must complement the development partners that support them. If one was to ask, how much does Kenya put into, say, like the Kenya government, What budget does it put into NDMA? I suspect it will be very little. So we need to preempt so that these crises, we don't have to deal with an emergency, preempt it.
Let's take a short break right now. When we circle back, but I want to just leave you with this particular picture on the front page of the Daily Nation. In light of what is enshrined in the Constitution, this is undignifying. This is shameful. And of course, we've been having these pictures not just this year, last year, the year before. Remember also Kenya for Kenya initiative, right? Is Kenya remaining none the wiser as far as this event is concerned? And should any Kenyan really die in this country and this modern epic of time because of hunger? Is this poor management, poor leadership in this country? These are probing questions that we need to ask. And of course, in light of this and the sanctity of life, should Cabinet Secretary Eugene Nyong'o resign? What do you reckon? Right? We have your reactions here on Twitter. When we circle back, we shall look on them as well and continue the discussion with our panelists here. Don't go away. Grim picture on the front page of the Daily Nation today. Undignifying, shameful in a country where we taught ourselves to have rebased the economy, but still we're grappling with issues of hunger, famine, and drought. Why are we remaining none the wiser all over? And why? All throughout the years, right? What went wrong, right? There are probing questions being asked here. Touted as a model for sustainable agriculture, the Galana Kulalu project has collapsed. We had the Cabinet Secretary trying to also justify how it is working, and we're going to actually see the fruits of Galana Kulalu in the near future. But how long should we wait since the initiation of this particular project? Starving amidst plenty, stores in nearby counties are overflowing with grain flowing standoff with farmers over prices. People are still dying. Dams. An ambitious plan to build dams for irrigation has turned into national corruption scandal. Disaster response. Despite early warning, response mechanisms and coping strategies remain miserably wanting. It's shameful for a country that we call ourselves to be developed or developing, and we still have these pictures on the front page of Italy. Let's just see some of the reactions that we have also on social media. We have Benny too saying, what's so hard about Turkana County building grain silos across Turkana and buying grain from Uasin Gishu? Some few strategic decisions can save the community this kind of pain. Also, we have Marlo saying, assume it's an election year and everybody will be zooming there with choppers and SUVs. We have Jen Mbuko saying, I will not be surprised if we start hearing about maize being imported to meet the artificial deficit or for emergency relief food to feed the dying Kenyans. Who will save us from this circus? We have also Jimmy Gakuo saying fruits of bad leadership and governance. Also, Denny, this county gets a whopping 10 billion shillings, yet people are starving. Turkana should be disbanded and Anok, together with his government, jailed for murder, he says. This is Denny. We have also PNK Guna saying, it's a big shame if leaders can't defend the corrupt. Also, we have MKH. He says, this is what government, government, if Turkana says the media has been awash with pictures from past, others are not Kenyans or victims of drought and other disasters. This misinformation undermines efforts by government and partners to address the situation, which, though serious, isn't at level depicted. I'll leave it for you to decipher that. Also, Wycliffe Ngutuku says, let's move all cereal boards and strategic food reserves to these areas. If other parts need food, they can as well transport from such areas. Also, we have Hashi saying, I'm really touched. This is so sad when our people are dying at the cost of the looters. We need to contribute to help our fellow citizens. Any pay bill number in place? Remember the pay bill number also with the Kenyans, for Kenyans initiative. Omar Bondo saying the rotten maize in stores, rotten leaders in power, citizens starved of food and good governance. Kenya in a rotting nutshell, right? And we have also Jojo saying, yani Kenya bado watu wanakufa, aibu kubwa. Then he says, DP President anajipiga kifua, aibu sana. Also, we do have Jen Mbuko still saying, all this when genuine farmers have maize rotting in poor strategic structures, storage structures, because NCPP could not buy their maize at a fair price. But NCPP could afford to pay fake farmers handsomely for imported maize. Shame, shame, shame. We have also Dennis Rotich saying, hii serikali yetu jameni. We have also Dikush saying, msewa narrative alituahidi, and we can see maybe a screen grab there. This is from Capital FM. Kenya, this is what Ruto promised in 2014. 1 billion shillings to guard against starvation. And we have also Wangoki Uni saying, this is so heartbreaking. Looks like we have two countries in the same damn country. What is happening to our country? And we have many of them. I shall be reading them in the course of the program. But I just want to also focus our discussion. Maybe we can hear and welcome also Prof.Anyan'g, Nyong'o. Good to see you, sir. It's been a while. And good to see you that you're in mint condition right now. Just to focus on what is happening right now with this particular story about drought and empty promises. What do you think? Is it an issue of poor leadership? And should Cabinet Secretary, who is responsible for this particular docket, resign?
Thank you very much, Debal. I'm glad to be back among my colleagues. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Jeremiah,
Welcome back.
And Senator. Now, I think we have to look at this thing in a long-term perspective. Drought has been with Kenya for a long time, since independence. And even in colonial times, there were plans to build big dams to deal with both floods and drought. I remember what we are still struggling to do in Kisumu County and Nandi County, Kericho County, the Kuru Soin multipurpose dam was planned by the colonial government in the 1950s. Yes, yeah, and its story is very interesting, and up to now it has not seen daylight. I think that's been a long-term concern to deal with drought and floods in the country. The problem is policy execution. And why policies are not executed systematically for a long time is because of wars in the bureaucracy of procurement. Anytime a project is to be procured, there are interests within the state which want a piece of the action in terms of something to take home. So this delays the implementation of projects. This escalates the prices of projects. In the end, this also makes worse Kenya's indebtedness because some of the money is usually borrowed from abroad. So unless we make a decision now, and I think President Uhuru Kenyatta in his fight against corruption needs to make a very clinical analysis of this problem and make a decision. One, what are we going to do about projects which have been in the works for a long time? Two, how are we going to cut through the red tape of delaying procurement because of interested parties within the bureaucracy? Three, when these parties are caught with their hands in the till, in the public till, what happens? And I think the war that the Deputy President is raising against Kinoti, the Director of Criminal Investigations, is actually wrongly directed. You don't begin by saying the Deputy Director of Criminal Investigation is being used without telling people who is using the Deputy Director of Public Criminal Investigation. Secondly, when the whole thing started of the fight, taking action against corruption in the bureaucracy, both the Deputy Director of Criminal and the DPP and the President and the Deputy President were all in one tune that this thing must be done. Now, if something is going wrong, you don't then go and cry wolf in public. You sit down with the President and say, Mr. President, look, this war we are involved in, I'm noticing this and this is going wrong, let's correct it this way. But when you behave like this, you completely demoralize the public. Because the public sees the Deputy Director of Public Prosecution and the Deputy Director of Criminal as making an attempt which has not been made before. Now, if something is wrong, it is not to cry wolf in public, to sit down in government and correct it and strengthen these people who are trying to correct this thing because it has been with us for a long time. So I wouldn't look at, personally, I wouldn't look at this drought as an isolated thing. I would look at it as something which is germane in the way government has been running for a long time, because many attempts have been made in the past to build dams, to deal with the drought and so on. They have not succeeded. And we know now, when we look at what is happening, that this cancer in government or fighting over procurement, or saying who will do what, and then finally escalating the cost because you want to have a cut. It is what is killing our society.
But,
and our government.
Prof, respectively, for a person who is in Turkana, he doesn't really understand the dead hand of bureaucracy about procurement and the implementation from government. They don't really care a figure at the end of the day.
I know that the person in Turkana doesn't care, but I care. Because I can see, I must be able to tell the person in Turkana, look, we want to deal with this problem, but these are the issues. So that we don't begin dealing with the problem from appearances. We deal with the problem from the real causes. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying, yes, I definitely feel pained and like the nation, pain and shame observation in the middle of plenty. Yes, we feel pain and we're ashamed. But why is it that we have this plenty and we don't do something about it? And you can see that, yes, we have tried to do something about it, but we have failed in the past because of the reasons I'm given. That's what I'm saying.
You know what, Prof? Yeah. I remember, this is just metaphorical. There's actually a story was being told about this particular dog which was barking, you know. And then at the end of the day, they came and realized this actually the particular dog is sitting on a nail. You know, no, just a moment. He's sitting on a nail. Every year. This is how Kenya is with that dog sitting on that nail. Why can't we just move from the nail? We have the same pain that actually is, you know, pricking us every year. Right? This particular puppy is sitting on this particular nail. So instead of moving on,
because when we try
we're stuck there.
When we try to move, the very individuals we expected to lead in the movement pull us back. I mean, look, Anaya, you are not a deputy president. That position is not germane to you. You are here just as a TV anchor. But there's somebody who is in their position who is capable of doing something. So I get really pained when I see the person who is capable of doing something, crying wolf in public, rather than going to the cabinet and sitting down with the president, all these people say, look, we are getting this fight on corruption wrong. Let's do it this way. But if you come to the public doesn't know all those things in government. They don't. So the public gets frustrated and say, look, we thought that what is important now is to tackle the starvation in Turkana rather than tell us that cannot be being used. You see what I mean?
Okay, let's hear from Shem. So are we that puppy?
I think we are. I was just looking at the Constitution, and particularly Chapter 4 that talks of the Bill of Rights. And maybe the leaders here may enlighten us. I remember the due date was delayed, particularly for sections of this chapter. Perhaps that's something that Kenyans have forgotten about. I think we need to bring them into effect. I'm looking at, for example, Article 20A, that says it's the responsibility of the state to show that there are no sufficient resources to meet certain obligations. And it goes further in B to say, in allocating resources, the state shall give priority to ensuring the wildest possible enjoyment of rights with having regard to prevailing circumstances, including the vulnerability of particular groups of individuals. That's what our Constitution says. And of course, in terms of vulnerability, it's expounded on further in Article 21(3), which states all state organs and all public officers have the duty to address the needs of vulnerable groups within society. That's a right. I am assuming that that's one of the articles that's already applicable. Then, of course, somebody needs to answer. And in this regard, I agree with Mheshimiwa Kioni when he says the minister need not only resign, but those concerned need to be prosecuted because the blood of those who have died is in their hands.
Okay.
If they had done their work well, they wouldn't have.
All right. I just want to go back to that editorial cartoon again. And we look at what Victor has drawn for us. With the choppers notwithstanding, you see this particular infant or a child that actually, the face is actually backed inside that particular mark. The irony is this. There is a whole waterbed here. We've discovered aquify in Turkana. This is in 2013, right?
Sure.
What is on the surface belies what actually is within because we have water, enough water. And it is the government, the same government, which came and told Kenyans that, you know, the water, the 250 cubic meters cubic, is it meters or liters of water? Yes, has been liters of water has been discovered in Turkana that can feed the region.
Correct.
For 70 good years.
Right.
We had the U.S. government pumping 25 billion shillings, you know, for this particular project. No one has come to the fore to tell Kenyans what has happened, right? No one has come to Kenyans even to show us that, yes, there has been a groundbreaking ceremony. This is the initiative we want to see. The minister actually, calling the media for a groundbreaking ceremony for this aquifer. We see projects here. Why should we be having someone starving here? Yet there is a whole expanse of waterbed that can feed this county for 70 good years. And these are questions we need to ask you leaders, right? We have water beneath.
Correct.
Why are we dying of hunger? And there is water. Or they'll come and say this is saline water. Right. It can be treated. Elsewhere in the world it has happened, isn't it?
Yeah. It's true. But even listening to the commentators, I think they make a very poignant proposal. They are saying maybe going forward, let's have these silos and warehouses in those particular areas, because moving the
Please, let's just focus on the aquifer for a minute, because I think for me that is disturbing.
That's key.
Yes, we have enough water in Turkana. Forget about the silos, because it seems silos are not really working for us. We have water there. Jeremiah Kioni, you as a leader then, what will you do to make sure that the water in Turkana is effective? You're the chair of the Constitution Implementation Committee. We are talking about the human dignity, seeing that particular picture. That should worry you.
Yes, and it does, to the point where my mind is almost refusing to move to where you are taking me.
I want us to go there, because that's the answer lies there.
I say this, Dibal, because one is that I hope we have not abandoned the fact that, without doubt, we must continue exploiting the potentials and the reserves that we have in this country for the resources that God has given us to us. And that includes the water in Turkana. And we thank God and the experts who are able to discover that we have that amount of water in Turkana and can be used to help us deal with the issues of hunger. And again, you need to appreciate why all these things are tied together. And I think that's what the professor was saying. The dams that we were trying to construct and we are constructing, and we have some, maybe not dams, when you look at them in Daragwa, they are ponds. Some of them may look like boreholes or wells. But the dams that are being done across the country, the small ponds, including the very big ones that now have captured the headlines. They're called what? We have the 3-4 dams that have captured our discussions for the last couple of weeks. You see, we will need to spend a lot of money to exploit that aquifer. We will need to go to the international community to help us achieve that. For them to come to our aid, they must see and we must demonstrate to them that we are using every shilling that we have ourselves, and that which they give, they may want to add to our coffers, and using it well. And when it is not used well, we are also able to follow it and prosecute it. And I think that is why we need to fault the people who seem to be worried a lot. And there are reasons to get worried. But we need to support the war against corruption. We need to make sure that corruption is also being fought, certainly objectively. And we need to make sure that we don't lose that.
Thank you.
But as readers, we will need to get to the bottom of it. Certainly, Dibal, the fact that we have that amount of water in Turkana, and it's water we have not been able to use for the last 60 years, is for the reason that we didn't have the resources to exploit it. And once we get these resources, we also need to make sure that the resources are used properly, and they are used effectively in an efficient manner, and we can be able to account for every penny.
Thank you.
So I see the fight against corruption as also, or let me put it this way, our corrupt nature, which is not something that we should be talking on national television, but these corrupt tendencies actually contribute eventually to the hunger issues that we have in this country. It is the lack of thinking of that other person, and just thinking of how you can benefit yourself for the 70 years that you are alive, and you remember that you're forgetting that you also put you under that soil, and just preoccupying yourself with how much money can I make, you know, without addressing the issues that have been there in the Constitution. Right. And I don't want, you have covered it in your coverage here. How, if including the county government, how they have dealt with this issue before it got to this far? The law allows us to do it. They are not shortcuts. All right. But in terms of emergencies,
just a moment.
What do we do?
All right. Just a moment. We'll come to Samuel Pogiso. I think he's been mouth for a while. But I just want to remind you, and this was actually also captured by BBC, what I'm telling you about the aquifer. Kenya aquifer is discovered in Turkana. Right. And this was in 2013, September. And it says a huge water source has been discovered in the arid Turkana region of northern Kenya, which could supply the country for 70 good years, the government says. The discovery of the two aquifers brings hope to the drought-hit region, tweeted Environment Minister Judy Ohungu then. They were found in the Turkana Basin and Lotikipi Basin using satellite and radar. Last year, scientists released a map detailing the vast reservoirs which lie under much of Africa. It goes on to say Turkana is one of the hottest, driest and poorest parts of the country and was hit by a devastating drought last year. That last year was 2012.
2012.
Right. That was 2012. Sure. Many of the region's inhabitants are nomadic herders who are especially vulnerable to lack of rains. The test drillings confirmed there was water underground. There is water. And this is, we're talking about how many years back? 6 years back. Right. No information on what is happening right now down the line.
The priorities.
So, you're talking about priorities. I just want to ask, first of all, then what should be holding much premium? Is it the oil in Turkana or the water in Turkana? Samuel Pogiso.
Definitely, it's the water in Turkana. If you give me the chance to choose, because that's life. The Turkana must live first. You know, Turkana is actually a desert, but endowed with body waters that surround it. You know, the Lake Turkana itself has a lot of water. Then the river Kerio and the river Takwel, these are all permanent rivers that flow throughout, but they're on the fringes. So if you really wanted to invest in Turkana, it would be to make sure that that water serves the common people. Then we got this good news, as you know, great news, that an aquifer had been discovered. By the way, discovered because we had never asked the people, because the people themselves knew that there was water underneath there. In fact, the names given to that area indicates to you that there's water underneath it. So they knew, and then when we find it, we call a press conference and declare to the world that we have finally solved the problem of Turkana. And that was it. The press conference was it. And then after that, completely closed. No one is, because even if you said the water is brackish, you would have a solution to that. I mean, people are drinking fresh water from the sea, from the salty water from the sea. And because they can now, there's a lot that can be done. This is not even salty, this is just brackish. And even the water from Lake Turkana can be purified to make water available for people to drink. So it is in the attitude and the sanctity of life as it is that is missing in our management of public affairs. Because there will be, I'm not even a prophet, but there will be ships on the high seas right now already with maize. Because they know that once you declare it a disaster, it is for a purpose of getting that. Already the guys who have lined up these things. And I'm just saying that the way we should go is to say one life lost should trouble us, all of us in this country.
Yes.
And I think that's where we're going. But the water is there. We just need to work on it. It's not also expensive to exploit it because it's a matter of, the water is not very deep. It can be brought up. But now to treat it for people to do agriculture, and it would actually irrigate masses of land in Turkana and give life to the Turkana people. So I am one of those who says we could even put this as a priority and make sure that money is put to make sure that people have water. And it's not just Turkana. Turkana will never change. Turkana, we know is a desert. There is Turkana, we know that by the time this season enters, people are going to die. We know the same in Baringo. We know the same in Northeastern.
It's a desert, but there is water underneath. Yes. That can change if we have good leadership.
So we need to make that a priority.
All right. Let's just see some of the reactions that we have also on Twitter here. Omondi or Wycliffe is saying people dying of hunger at this time in this country. People are dying of hunger at this time in this country? I doubt if we have a country anymore, a country we can be proud of. But leadership and corruption is killing this country. We have also Charles Mwanda saying, not step aside, should have resigned like yesterday. We were asking you about the Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Devolution. Should he resign, or should he actually resign in light of the deaths that have occurred because of drought in this country? We have SK Silgich saying he should have been fired the day we lost the first life, and the governors in those counties, including the MCAs, should resign if we value human life. But in Kenya, no one cares. We're even killed by the police who should protect us. When will we know life is more important? And also Tits Kemboi saying, well, the buck stops with the county government. Also we have Jackie saying it's not just about the CS. The whole government should be responsible for those suffering in Turkana. Why can those dams be constructed in Turkana and the irrigation carried out has happened in Egypt? Why not Kenya? Also we have Orina Bernard Wakenchik Naivasha. Wakenchik, right? Okay. Why they are joking with Kenyans' lives? We elected them to give us any assistance if needed, but they are nowhere to be seen. Wakitafuta kura ndio wanatuhitaji. Wawache poroja, I think he's trying to say. Also, we have Salas again, then Eugene Wamalo will come out and say the government has set aside 6 billion shillings for hunger response every year. We have money to respond, but no plans to provide sustainable solutions to the people. We have Miguna saying, I concur with Honorable Kioni. The CS for devolution is busy attending funerals in Bumula, yet Kenyans are dying. And we have Macau Castro saying a huge water source has been discovered in the arid Turkana region of Kenya, which could supply the country for 70 years. The government says this is exactly what we were talking about. And we have also Jeremiah Kariuki saying the CS and the National Drought Management, that is the MD, maybe the National Drought Management Authority, has a responsibility on the lives and property lost. They ignored early warnings. IPC, that is, well, it gives that early warnings and continue to keep mum about the Turkana drought. And they go on and on and on.
On the aquifer,
have we heard from the Prof on the aquifer? Prof, please, on the aquifer. For 70 good years, we have water in Turkana. I mean, the paradox. It's, you know...
I agree with Jeremiah. It's really a question of priorities and a question of planning, really. When we did Vision 2030, we put Vision 2030 to give the government a head start on planning for the future and hoping to achieve certain things by 2030.
Yes.
That means that you have to have certain projects lined up to achieve certain goals. One of the projects that should have been lined up in the whole of Kenya is how to achieve the goal of having enough water, not just for agriculture, but also for human consumption. This is not rocket science. I mean, every nation does this which wants to help their people. Now, you may find a nation which has plenty of water, like the Democratic Republic of the Congo, has the biggest endowment of water the world over. But then when you don't have a government which focuses on planning to use that water for the good of the people, the water will lie there and it will never be used. You see what I mean? I take, for example, Lake Victoria, one of the biggest freshwater lakes in the world. Now, for a long time, it has been infested by hyacinth, whatnot. It is there, the biggest freshwater lake in the world. But if you look at the extent to which it is used for maritime transport, tourism, leisure, and so on over the last couple of years since independence, we actually went back after the collapse of the East African community. So really, let's be frank with ourselves. Governments are there to plan and execute plans to help improve the lives of the people. If people are in the government purely for rent-seeking and to use procurement for their own personal needs, and then go to the platform and shout that the law enforcement agencies are hurting them politically, it is we ourselves as citizens who will be blamed. Why do you listen to such people when you can actually see what has been happening over time, that they have not implemented plans and policies to improve the life of the people? In the case of Turkana, as the BBC says, it was known in 2012.
Yes.
What the government should have done, okay, this is the reality.
Yeah.
What now do we do between now and 2020? There must be a time action plan which commits the government to achieve certain objectives by a certain time. Yeah.
Right.
On the aquifer, just briefly, Debal, you know, we recently had the Sustainable Blue Economy Global Conference.
Yes.
I'm alive to the fact that civil society actually this week reviewing what some of the resolutions, hopefully, together with government, some of the actions would be taken. But if I was the CS devolution, I would call two important and urgent meetings. The first one would immediate response, bring together the logistics companies. He says he has 5 billion shillings. So there is already some resource to start with. But there are many actors. There are transport companies. There are those who have got the food resource. Call an urgent interministerial as well as multi-sectoral meeting to find an immediate response to deal with the current problem. I would assume that NDMA already has grasped data of this, the extent of the hunger and famine that's ravaging that area. The second meeting I would convene interministerial, and in this regard, to be fair to devolution, it's not just devolution alone. Ministry of Agriculture has got also questions to answer. The same to Ministry of Water. What are we doing about that water? And that's the second meeting would convene. How can we tap into this water, that the aquifer that was found? And in this regard, no wonder some Kenyans in that part of the world, when they come to Nairobi, they are saying we are going to Kenya, because they don't consider themselves part of us. So those are two important meetings I would convene so that we latch onto that goodwill of the Bulu economy and tap into this resource, among, of course, the others. With the light touch, the Lake Victoria water, of course, we can pump oil all over across the region, and yet we have water. Why can't we pump it wherever it's badly needed? But in this case, we can even get water from the aquifer. We don't need to get it from Lake Victoria to go to Turkana and the neighborhood.
There is water. Jamal Kioni.
Yes, I see another one here. Bad potato seed imports hit farmers ahead of the rainy season.
That is the business daily.
That is now the business daily. Yes, and it is there. You are saying... Yes, well, not just Daragwa.
Is it happening in Daragwa?
It affects Daragwa.
Okay.
But look at it. We wanted 282 tons of potato seed in the country, and out of which 221 tons have been found to have a human bacteria, that a harmful bacteria disease, meaning that they are not going to be used. So next year again, without doubt, we'll have shortage of potatoes. How is it that we imported all the way until into our country seeds that are affected with some harmful bacteria? You can already see that that is going to get us in trouble. The same article tells us that we have capacity to produce 8 million tons of potatoes annually, meaning that we can become the regional producer and exporter, but we are only doing like 2 million tons. So why? I think we want to do everything and not just do that which we have been blessed with as a country. Because when you go to countries like Ireland, they are known for producing potatoes. I mean, we can just specialize in one thing, but we want to do everything at the same time, and we end up doing nothing all the time. I think it is very dangerous for us, and we need to really change, refocus our minds. But as you say, it's a challenge to us, all leaders, at all levels.
So we have a skewed priority. Yeah, before we provide for, I just wanted to, because you mentioned also the Big Four agenda, and food security is one pillar of the Big Four agenda. So when we have the president really touting the Big Four agenda, and we have the face like we do, or the picture that we have today on the front page of a Daily Nation, what does it portend for the Big Four agenda? Let's hear from Jeremiah Kioni. What does it portend? Not Jeremiah, but Samuel Pogisu.
Well, first of all, food security is already failing, because we've since independence, we've never managed to get a hold of food security. So if you make it a legacy project, you must start by making sure that the priorities go to saving lives, and also the dignity of lives in areas like Turkana and others. You know, it's very good to do things knowing exactly that you have the capacity to complete them. One of the issues that already ran us into problems is the dams which are being built or not being built, and already money has been used. And if that's the way we're going to go on food security, because that's supposed to be meant for food security. And I remember that I think that something must be done about county governments. County governments will probably hold better being participants in food security issues, because they then can begin to understand whom to feed and things like that, to secure their people. And I think there is a gap there between national government and county government in terms of, I give you a case in point, West Pokot County Governor, Prof.Anyan'g tried, and he bought bags of maize and put them in a store. He wanted to start his own, I think, silo and start. That ran into the headwinds with procurement and anti-corruption and so on. And I think that, so the idea is that manifesto says we will provide food and for the people, but now you can't do it because there's a gap there. So food security, without the participation of national and county governments together, and making this even a devolved function, so that the monies can follow that function. I think we have to do something about that. Otherwise, we will continue to have this tokenism where we take pictures distributing food and our people lining up to receive the food, which is very embarrassing.
Right. I think what Senator Pogosha is saying is very right. Food security is not rocket science. In fact, you can look at countries which you once used to starve, but now has excess food, like China. In 1972, when President Nixon went to China, the pictures we saw on TV when I was a student in the US were really terrible, what was happening in China. China then focused on making sure that the Chinese people was fed by a certain year. And pursuing that plan ruthlessly and logically, they achieved it to the extent that they can now be able to export some food to other areas and import what they need, which they cannot produce. For example, China imports soya beans from the US so that they can feed their pigs. You see what I mean? Yeah. And this is very interesting. And when Trump had this war and was stopping the export of soya beans to China, there was a crisis among pig farmers in China. Now, so we as a nation, there are these things we can do. For example, if in 2012 we discovered there was aqua fires in Turkana, that should have been a priority.
Right.
Yes.
Let's forget about these dams for the time being. Let's concentrate on exploiting the aqua fires and solving the Turkana problem. This is ready water. You see what I mean? And then we can move to other areas. But in our case, something come, aqua fire is there, Soror Dam is there, I don't know.
The oil is there as well.
So you begin maybe moving in all kinds of things without any priority, you see. And you abandon the plants. The plants are there, by the way.
Yes.
Let me tell you, Kenya is good, very good at having plants. When I was Minister for Planning, I was surprised how many documents were there. Planning for producing this, whatnot. They are very good documents, you see. The problem is that for somebody to sit down and say, okay, these are good, but within this period of time, what do we want to do? And I think this was the focus of Vision 2030. There are so many things that we can do. But between now and 2030, what is it that we can achieve that will put this country forward? And I think when the Jubilee government chose the big four, that's what I thought that was being done. That, okay, there are so many things, but within this period of time, let us focus on this and deliver. You see? But if then within about 2 years we find, you made a wrong choice, yes, you are not bound to stick by that, but explain to the people, and then concentrate on something that is deliverable within a certain time action plan.
But Prof, you've just been also from Kirinyaga, with the Devolution Conference, and I wonder, was food security also top of the agenda? Was it?
It was in the agenda. I wouldn't say it was top of the agenda.
It was in the agenda.
But it was on the agenda.
But last year it was on the agenda, isn't it?
It has to be on the agenda all the time because it has to be.
But I just want to know. Just a moment. I just want to know what really. You're talking about implementation because I want to see. I have a report here for last year's Devolution Conference. This is 2018 Kakamega, and I think Article 4.3. It was the agriculture enablers towards achieving food security. If I just pick it up. And they said, they had a panel discussion also, and they came up with some of the resolutions. And just zoom out so that they can see, it's very tiny. But the session observed that the biggest impediment to increase agricultural production was the existing gaps in legal and policy framework that led to disjointed approach to food and agricultural production. While the national and the county governments are meant to complement each other, they are often conflicted in terms of discharge of various mandates. For example, whereas food security is a devolved function, the national government retains certain residual functions such as research and development and it continues on and on and on.
That is true. That's what I think.
You talk about implementation.
No, that's the point that Senator Pugisho was making, that you as a governor, you may have a very noble idea of having food security. But the moment you start it, you run the headwinds to laws and regulations that don't allow you to do certain things. That's what was meant there. Let me give you an example. In the sugar industry, which is now in a lot of problems, the government decided some time ago to disband the sugar board, okay? Now, with sugar board went a lot of things. Went things like a sugar development levy, which was very important for developing the sugar industry. And then nothing replaced that one. So when the sugar development levy went, there was no source of funds that could be given to the farmers as a loan. The factories had no kitty where they could get money when they wanted to improve factories, so they had to turn to the national government to get money all the time, which is a very inefficient way of dealing with things and invites corruption. And that was what happened, straight and simple. So now we are going back and it says SDL should be brought back, whatnot, after wasting so much time. That is the conflict between the national government and the counties. I'll give you another example. Okay, in Kisumu County, we said, okay, we want to improve food security within the framework that is possible for us. We don't want to do something that will run us into headwinds with the national government. So we say, okay, fine. One of the things that we notice is that milk production is very low in Kisumu County. And milk is important for kids. So let us begin by investing on a dairy industry. And we started working with USAID and ILRI to begin dairy production in an area which is very high potential dairy area, Moroni, because we want an area which will bring us quick success to give confidence to the others. And it's doing very well. I mean, after about a year, it is doing very well. So we have started expanding, putting cooling plants in other sub-counties. My point is that to have food security, you must begin somewhere within the framework of the resources, both in human beings' resources and money, that you can manage. And the Kenyan government should do the same thing in terms of food security. Don't take bite which you cannot chew, but do something where you can get concrete results in real time.
Well, if I were just to supplement, if we have 56 billion to build small dams or dams, and we have ready water underground, can you imagine if we took that money and got the water from Turkana and purified it? It would solve a bigger problem. Because you know the process of building a dam is that you have to wait for rains to fill that dam.
But we already have water.
Here is water, which is so much. They say it will last 70 years.
70 years.
As a strategic place for the country. I'm just saying this is why we're saying priorities. Priorities, I think, needs to come back to, let's get this water from underground. Pump it. Let it solve the problem maybe of a quarter of Kenya. It doesn't have to be the whole of Kenya. It solves the problem of Turkana and northern areas. We actually have embraced now a dignity of our people and brought them to a place where they can feed themselves.
Right. I just wanted to before we go there, you have something to say.
I keep mentioning Professor
Magoha.
My wife keeps questioning me on the pronunciation because I have to be very careful. Professor Magoha. What he said when he was being interviewed is very telling, and I think it's in line with what Professor Nyong'o and Senator is saying. If you cannot measure it, it cannot be done, or don't even start doing it. Start by making sure that what you want to do is measurable. And that was a really telling interview that he was having with my colleagues in Parliament. And you remember he put them on the spot when he thought when they tried to think that we were appointing a Ruo and not a Kenyan who is going to serve the whole country. And I think this is exactly what Professor is saying. We have all those documents exist. Planning documents of how we can achieve this and the rest. I think we need, and he was saying in the Ministry of Education, there must be very many systems. But if there are systems and you cannot be able to measure what you have achieved at a given time, don't bother with that. And I think that is, we need to change our way of doing things. For example, the CS, irrigation, CS, devolution, you need to say, during my 6 months, this is what I've been able to achieve and such. And I have seen in these issues of dams and ponds, I wanted to just throw in something that I've seen done in my constituency and in other constituencies across the country. There are these small water ponds that are being done, which is harvesting rainwater. And they are just like, they give you like 1,000 cubic meters of water. And they transform an area like that. There was some very dry part of my constituency, and we've done a few of them. And one person was able to do 15 acres of tomatoes from 1,000 cubic liters of water. And these are the kind of things, small things, measurable. You can see it has an impact, and the rains are now coming. Certainly, before we are through with the long rains, all those ponds will have water. And I expect the areas to be, and I'm going now to see, we gave you a dam. What have you done? Where are the vegetables? Where are the skumawikis? And so that we can start seeing that kind of thing may help some of these areas that we are doing. So we need to do those things that are measurable. I like the issue of introducing dairy farming in a given area within Nyanza, because then you can see the multiplier effect coming. So the Kenyans want to see others do it, and they also do it.
Yeah, Dr. Shemuchogo.
Debal, you're talking of the devolution conference, actually, and in this regard, maybe governors, senators may help. Resolution, this year's devolution conference, number 16, talked about, within the next 1 year, the Ministry of Agriculture, Water, and the county governments would develop policy to guide water resource sharing, but also increase investment, underline, in water infrastructure. I'm hoping that Excellency Governor and the others will ensure when they sit down to implement, this aquifer will be one of those that should be taken up within the next 1 year. And also in recommendations number 8 and 9, talking of the big four, because you cannot talk of food security without addressing the water resource issue. There is also the recommendation in number 8 from the DevCon this year in Kirinyaga, that for the big four, the devolved functions, the national government shall, in the next budget cycle, allocate resources, money following the functions, which I think the members on the panel have been talking about. And lastly, number 9 resolution, both levels of government shall, in the next 1 year, that's the next 12 months, make substantial investment in cottage and agro-processing industries. I am hoping that practical activities, so that when DevCon convenes again next year, you can demonstrate this was achieved in these particular areas.
Yeah, good one from the resolution this year. But also, I think from last year, you'd come up with the idea that Kenya should also diversify, you know, when it comes to our staple food. Instead of relying heavily on maize, we should diversify to other, you know, crops as well, cash crops in this country. I don't know how far we've made that particular progress.
I think that's really tied to this issue of water resources, because when we think of diversifying, we think of cash crop. But when I think of diversifying, I think of what people eat. I mean, one of the most important staple food in this country is ugali.
Sure.
Yeah, which is based on maize and millet and so on. But we can shift from having ugali as a sort of starch to going to cassava and rice and so on, you know, and even a mixture of those. And that takes conscious government policy. For example, if you're going to introduce a new diet, you must make it known. You must advertise it. You must tell them the advantage. And then people will then say, now I think I should do this. Because otherwise you must assume that peasant farmers are used to tradition. If they had been growing maize, like in my sub-county Seme, there's a part of Seme where people are growing maize, but there's no rain. You see? So you want to tell them to move from maize to millet, because millet doesn't require as much water. Now that requires a lot of education. People also stopped growing cassava some time ago, whereas cassava is very good, you know. So, and I remember in colonial times, the colonial government used to have these extension workers who came to hold meetings every Tuesday, the chief's baraza, to tell people what to do. These things must continue, because people have not changed that much, you know. So if agriculture is in the hands of the county, it is in the hands of the county. We in the county government must be at the center of this shift to diversify our food. I think that's why that resolution was made, so that we become conscious as governors that the idea of diversifying, you know, foods is not up there in the air. It is one of the functions that are inherent in agriculture being in the hands of counties. Yeah.
Thank you. We have reactions on Twitter, and let's just see what they're saying. Chief says, Kenya has never been food secure since independence. What are we currently experiencing is acute food insecurity, where all the 4 components of food, availability, accessibility, affordability, availability, I should say, accessibility, affordability, and utility has completely failed. We have Abdi Isak saying, what kind of question is that? Only in failed state do you ask that question. Such CSs or such CS will be summoned to State House to explain why he will keep his job. This is in light of what we are asking. Should the CS, of course, in charge of this particular docket resign because we've lost lives so far, and we honor our lives, the sanctity of lives in this country. We have Kenya West saying the CS should step aside. Why should we trust him when he already crushed the Galana Kulalu project? Also, we have Nyakiana saying he is led to step aside. No single life should be lost, but all we hear is it wasn't me. May we have the courage to choose leaders than looters. Also, we have Victor Marende saying, Dibal, the problem of drought in Kenya is system mismanagement. The amount of rains that Kenya experiences is well utilized, is enough for all. The water table we have as a nation is equally enough. Egypt is a desert far away and has water, so Turkana is so close, and you'll see rain will be here, and it will just drain down, you know, that water will not be harvested. It will just drain down through the tubes. Also, I think mine has disconnected. But just briefly, I shall show you a certain picture as we're winding up. But Dr. Shemochodo, you have to say something.
Just one little one. When Professor was talking about diversification of food maize, although this may be a topic for another day, there's the problem of aflatoxin in maize, which is a major cause of cancer, which is something that we need to address as a nation. But I'm hoping that that's an agenda that we can take up another day, because it's not just a question of getting food, but it needs to be nutritious. Debala was talking of the aflatoxin as a problem, but that can be a debate. It's a nexus between food security and universal health care.
Right.
But can be another day.
Maybe I just want to pick the brains of Professor. I want to just play this particular, look at that particular chicken.
My goodness.
Yeah, it's as a defeathered or a denuded chicken.
Yeah.
But it brings, and I know from the political, you're a political scientist.
Yeah.
Remember Stalin?
Yeah.
He plucked the chicken, feather by feather, one by one, right, painfully. Yeah. And he said he wanted to just show it to his coteries, you know, the military, that this is the behavior of a human being. I'll pluck one by one, you know, the feathers from a chicken, and I'll put it down. But if I pass out, you know, the dribs and drabs of maize or of crumbs of bread, it will always come to me.
Come back to me.
Then he said, this is the human behavior. As much as you'll painfully unpluck those feathers, they will always come back to you for food. And this is the idea that they're using in politics. Yes? People are saying this is a politicization. We'll always come back with a pail in hand.
But that is,
you remember the story.
Yeah, I know. But
just as you're winding up.
It is interesting that it was Stalin who said that, because it was a dictatorship. In dictatorship, the government denies you all kinds of things. But if you try to say anything, they will pack the feathers from you one by one. But you know that you can only get food from the government. But in a democracy, it's different. In a democracy, if you really try to pluck that feather from that chicken, there are so many chickens which would start shouting and protesting in defense of that one, that you'll have to drop it very fast.
Yes, you pack a few.
Yeah, you see what I mean? That's the difference between democracy and dictatorship.
Thank you. Let's just get a parting shot.
Perhaps the other angle to it is that that is, I think, what is being addressed. By our constitution, we are talking about human dignity. And we must look for ways of criminalizing the acts that may not be covered by a law that contribute to human indignity. This is so that we stop seeing people plucking one feather after the other, because that is what you do when you want to become a populist.
Thank you.
You know, you pluck them and then keep giving small doses, and people keep running towards you because you're only the source of hope. And it is
that's why Jeremiah and I are against Harambe. Because it is the Harambe that thinks that natural kind of
chicken. For mine, we cannot forget to compliment Gor Mahia for making it through the next stage in African Cup, despite the fact that 3 of theirs were red carpeted, red carded.
Red carded.
So it's commendable, and we wish Kogalo well going
Right.
forward.
Maybe we should sing their song.
Absolutely.
All right. Pogizio, we'll sing it as you're winding up.
We got ourselves into this. Okay, I was going to do the same, but also you all watched that there was something called the Kenyan Open in golf.
Yes.
And the Kenyan performance was dismal. And I think that this is one area where we need to grow our own players to perform. There's a lot of money to be won.
Thank you. All right, Prof. I think this is your chance now to sing for Gor Mahia.
Yes.
You get your parting shot. Yeah, let's sing as we were winding up. I don't know the song.
You'll get it.
Okay.
Famous.
Gor Mahia okelo kombe mang'eny Kenya. Jo Kenya duto yie kodu Gor Mahia. Gor Makogalo, Jotugo ya famous.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Let me see, my final one is that for as long as this, we allow Kenya to continue with this endless subdivision and conversion of agricultural land to residential units and other uses that are not useful in terms of food security. It's a tall order. It will hurt us down the line.
Thank you very much. I want to thank you, Governor Prof.Anyan'g of Kisumu. Thank you for coming through this morning. Thank you for the cogent discussion. Also, Senator Samuel Pogizio, West Pokot Senator. Thank you for coming through. Also, Dr. Shema Chodo, the Kenya Diaspora Alliance Global Leader. Thank you for coming through. And also, I want to thank you, Jeremiah Kioni, who is a Member of Parliament from Daragwa and the Chair of COC. Thank you for coming through and for that cogent discussion. We leave you this particular telling picture. Kenyans should not be dying, or this should not be, not that particular picture, but this one actually on the front page of a Daily Nation, right? This is undignifying. In this epoch of time, no one should be dying of hunger in this country. So we're really worried, and this is really disturbing. And we want to see what the government will do moving forward, henceforth, from this particular telling picture as well. Thank you for your valid company and your reactions on Twitter. We really do appreciate it.